Hi guys, welcome back. We're here to read the Strawberry Patch Pancake House, and I believe we left off on chapter 12. Where's my... Yep. Okay, chapter 12, page 85. He's making you dinner? What the hell is going on over there, Iris? Bex, calm down. Iris was driving to her 10 o'clock aerobics class while Olive was at school. They'd actually made it on time today, and she was feeling pretty good about that until her cousin called to rain on her parade. Maybe she shouldn't have mentioned the late night chat and pancake testing as well as a subsequent dinner invite, but it wasn't like it was a date or something. He's making dinner for Olive and himself and just offered for me to join them. It makes sense. We live in the same house. I can't just not be home whenever he is. Her cousin's long-suffering sigh came clearly through the speaker. You need to keep the line between you very clear, Iris. He's your boss. I am aware of that, thank you, and nothing even happened. Besides some light ogling while he cooked. She was only human, and it was impossible to avoid noticing how sexy her new boss was. But despite what Bex thought, she could practice restraint. Just because she found a man sexy did not mean she had to immediately jump his bones. She understood the boundaries here, but she wasn't about to turn down a delicious and free meal. Anyway, are you coming to class today? No, can't today. I picked up a few more lessons. Okay, I'll text you later. Just be careful, Iris. If things go sideways with this guy, you're out of a job and a place to live, unless you want to reconsider my offer. I love you, Bex. Gotta go. Iris hung up before she could get lectured anymore. Growing up, the girls had seen plenty of men come and go in their mothers' lives, and it had left Bex wary of all men. Iris, on the other hand, may have been more like her mother than she cared to admit. Much like her employment record, Iris's relationship record didn't exactly reflect longevity. She liked relationships like she liked her chicken wings, hot and fast. If she'd learned one thing from her mother, it was that romantic love was fleeting, but sex was fun while it lasted. And while her mother never seemed overly distraught when things ended, it was young Iris who was left missing the latest casualty of her mother's wandering attention. Eventually, she learned to stop hoping that her mother's latest boyfriend would maybe one day become her new stepdad. But clearly, some damage had been done because grown-up Iris didn't bother getting too close to any man. Things just seemed safer that way. And besides, she wasn't reckless enough to sleep with her. She pulled into the parking lot of the Y, grabbed her gym bag, and headed in. The ladies were already congregated around the pool by the time she got in. The room was hot and humid and chlorine-scented. It felt like home. Teaching her seniors exercise classes had been the one job that had stuck with Iris over the years. She would never abandon her students. Good morning, girls, she said, getting everyone's attention. Good morning, Iris, the ladies trilled. Iris smiled. These were her people, fully formed people who could tell her exactly what they wanted and needed. She didn't have to guess what they were thinking or worry that they were starving to death. All the ladies looked fully fed and happy this morning. How's the new job? Carol, one of her most loyal students, asked as Iris checked them off one by one on her clipboard. It's going well. Oh, how's Olive doing? Iris nearly laughed, as if these women didn't know how Olive was doing, as if they weren't on a constant rotation of just stopping by or we were in the neighborhood. Archer's freezer was overflowing with how's Olive's casseroles. As well as can be expected, I guess. Of course, the poor dear. The women were dying to ask more. Iris could feel it. They were vibrating with curiosity, but she wasn't about to air Archer's life out for the whole town to examine. In the living situation, Janet ventured, is that going well too? Estelle scoffed. You all just want to know what it's like living with that handsome chef. Janet turned scarlet, nearly matching the giant tropical flowers on her bathing suit. I did not say that, but you meant it. Ladies, we should really start class, Iris said, trying to steer the women back to business. Maybe knowing exactly what they wanted wasn't always a blessing. These women wanted the details. Now you're going to hold on Now you're going to hold out on us, Iris? You told us all about that fella you met at the music festival last summer, and the one from the yoga retreat, and the guy you met in the produce department at the grocery store. Yes, well, Iris cut in quickly before Marissa could elaborate on Iris's sweaty weekend fling with Pablo. She really did need to learn to keep her mouth shut. That was different. This is just a job, and Archer is my boss, and so far things are going well. Disappointment filtered through the group. Now let's get in the pool and get started, Iris said brightly, leading the way to the water. He is very attractive, she heard Carol whisper to Janet. He sure is, but have you been to the diner lately? He's turning the place upside down. With that body, he can cook me whatever he likes. The women burst into giggles, and Iris jumped in the pool, wishing she could stay underwater long enough to miss out on her class of 70 and 80-year-olds waxing poetic about Archer's muscular arms and broad chest. But unfortunately, her lung capacity just wasn't that good. Instead, she cranked her workout playlist and started shouting commands. Eventually, everyone fell into line. Everyone except Iris's brain, which was happily playing on a loop its own playlist of the way Archer's arms looked when he cooked. Not helpful, brain. Not helpful at all. Olive had come home grumpy from kindergarten, so they were watching baking shows when Archer arrived back later that evening. Iris had been skeptical of the appeal of this one, but she was now fully invested in whether that designer purse was actually made out of cake. Hey, welcome home, she said when Archer entered, but neither she nor Olive took the eyes from the screen. Hey, Archer said, shedding his chef's coat and tossing it on the chair. It is cake! I can't believe that! Iris slapped a hand on her knee. She would have sworn that cake purse was the real deal. I told you so, Olive mumbled through her victory, though her victory still wasn't doing much for her mood. What is she eating? Archer asked, his eyes on Olive. A Pop-Tart, Iris said, facing his intense disappointment. God, and this guy wondered why his kid was silent around him? With that face, how could she not be? He looked chiseled from a very disappointed stone. Do you know how processed those things are? I know that they taste good and that they are one of the two things I've gotten her to eat. He frowned. What's the other? Aha, Mr. High and Mighty Food Snob. Didn't know what Olive liked to eat either. Strawberries. He stalked off to the kitchen. Just eat your Pop-Tart, she whispered to Olive. I'll handle your grumpy dad. Olive took another defiant bite. Good girl, Iris patted her head. She still had the braided pigtails Iris had put in this morning, although they'd gotten a little fuzzy throughout the day. She looked rumpled and sleepy, and Iris had to admit the little creature was growing on her. She followed Archer into the kitchen. Bad day? He scowled, pouring himself a drink. It was fine. You never specified when you wanted me to feed her. If there's an approved menu, I'm gonna need it. He sighed, his shoulders sagging. No, sorry, You just want her to eat, and she's eating. You can teach her to like all your fancy French food later, okay? One step at a time. His stare was unreadable until he gave her a short nod. You're right, as long as she's eating something. Exactly. I, on the other hand, am totally on board to eat something other than Pop-Tarts. She noticed the bags Archer had set out on the counter, and she started to unpack them. What are you making? She didn't really know if it was appropriate for her to be chatting in the kitchen with him, but Olive didn't exactly need supervision in her TV watching, especially since Archer put child locks on the door so she couldn't sneak out of the house anymore. Steak frittatas, he said, pulling potatoes out of one of the bags as well as a bottle of wine. Glass of wine? Drinking with the boss? The lines were getting blurrier, but what was she supposed to do? Hide in a room until dinner was ready? She'd spent her first few evenings here going out for dinner just to avoid this situation, but that was unattainable. She lived here. Surely she could have a glass of wine with dinner. Sure, thanks. Red okay? This one pairs really nicely with steak. Sounds good. She watched him pour the wine and pull the rest of the ingredients from the bag, and she could imagine what he must have been like before coming here. Competent, talented, a man who was confident in his abilities, and he'd given it all up. He was peeling potatoes faster than she'd ever seen anyone peel before when she blurted out, It's really amazing that you gave this up. His hand stopped. A slight frown crossed his face, making her regret her words. I mean, not that you gave it up forever, but it's amazing that you left your old life to come here, to Dream Harbor and the diner and all. It must be different. He made that amused huffing sound she supposed passed for a laugh and went back to the potatoes, chopping them into precise slices, like a machine. She'd been right about those hands, capable of all sorts of tricks. Different is an understatement. His attention shifted to where Olive sat on the couch, and he somehow didn't chop his own fingers off. But it's not like I could just leave her. Plenty of people do. He paused his chopping, his intense gaze landing on her again, and suddenly it was too warm in the kitchen. She cleared her throat. My dad didn't have too much trouble taking off, and he knew about me. So she shrugged. It's kind of a big deal that you came back for her, Iris refused to identify as someone with daddy issues. She absolutely did not let the man who knocked up her mother have that type of control over her life. But it was a big deal that Archer had come back. He could have looked the other way and continued on with the life he'd already established, but he didn't. He was here, and he was trying. He was still looking at her, but less like he was disappointed and more like maybe didn't regret hiring her. Hey, Olive, Iris called into the living room, needing to break the tension. You should come in here. Your dad is like a real-life cooking show. She watched Archer as she said it, and she relished the smile that lit up his face for one brief moment before he bit it back and continued chopping. Olive appeared by her side before she could try and coax another smile from him. Later, she would try again, because now that she'd seen one, she wanted more. What's he making? Olive asked, climbing up into the stool next to her. French fries. I like French fries. Archer was still concentrating on the meal, but his lips twitched up. Me too, Iris said. I hope he doesn't mess them up, she whispered loudly, and Olive giggled. I can make steak frittatas in my sleep. I won't mess them up, Archer said with that confident smirk he'd given her the night before when he was cooking pancakes, and she knew she was seeing the real Archer. Sleep cooking. Wow, that would put an interesting spin on cooking shows, huh, Olive? The little girl's forehead crinkled. Sounds dangerous. Archer chuckled. I promise to stay awake. He dumped the cut potatoes into a bowl of cold water and then started unwrapping the steak from its brown paper package. I don't want that, Olive said, immediately recoiling in honor of the slab of raw beef. Have you tried it before? Archer asked, his voice gentle and calm, like he was trying not to scare her, like he had listened to Iris. You might like it if you try it. She shook her head. Okay, he shrugged. More for me and Iris, then. Iris is eating it? Olive asked, looking up at her. Damn right I am. I'd be happy to eat your piece. Olive frowned. I'm going to cook it first, Archer told her, with butter and rosemary. What's rosemary? It's an herb. Here, smell. He held up a sprig to Olive, and she took it between her tiny fingers. She brought it to her nose and took a tentative sniff. Archer's lips had curved into a small smile again, and Iris didn't know who was cuter. Olive with the rosemary under her little nose, or Archer watching her. Smells good, she said. So there you go. Maybe you'll try a tiny bite? A teeny tiny bite, she countered. Archer grinned. The teeny tiniest bite. A little mouse bite. Oh, she liked that. Her face lit up. A little cutie, little mouse bite, she sang. Hey, wait a minute. Does this mean I don't get your piece anymore? Iris said in a mock outrage, and Olive giggled. You get your own piece, Olive said, leaning her elbows on the counter. What are you doing now? She asked Archer, ignoring Iris's huff of outrage over her decreased portion. I'm going to season the steak. Do you want to help? Olive's eyes widened. Yeah. Archer looked like he might float away from shock and happiness, but he held it together and slid the salt dish across to Olive. We need a big pinch of salt. Can you do a big pinch? Olive made a little pinching motion with her fingers. Like this? Bigger. Archer took a liberal pinch of salt and sprinkled it over the steak. Like that. Now you. Like this? That's perfect. Very good. Olive beamed at her father, and their matching dimples nearly killed Iris. She took another sip of wine and watched the twosome make dinner together, with Archer explaining everything along the way and Olive soaking in the attention. By the time they ate, Iris was amazed the food could fit past the lump of emotion in her throat. She was glad she trusted her gut. These two needed her, and they needed each other, and she was helping bring them together. And just like Mary Poppins, once they didn't need her anymore, she would just put up her umbrella and float right on out of here. But after tonight's cooking demonstration, she wasn't so sure it would be as easy as she had originally thought. Chapter 13, page 95. A few nights later, Iris was heading back to her room from the bathroom when she nearly collided with Olive in the dark hallway. "Olive, what are you doing up?" The little girl didn't answer. She just kept walking down the hall, her blankie trailing behind her. She had a vacant look on her face that reminded Iris way too much of a horror movie. Was her head about to start spinning on her neck? "Olive, where are you going?" Iris followed her back out to the main living space. Archer was cleaning up the kitchen and he looked up from when they entered. "What's going on?" Iris shrugged. "I'm not sure. Hoping it's not a poltergeist situation." God, she was totally right. Children were scary. Just when she thought she had this one figured out, she got possessed by the devil or something like that. "A what?" Archer shook her head. "Olive, you should be in bed." The girl didn't respond or even look at him, just made her way to the front door and started fiddling with the knob. Iris and Archer looked at each other in confusion. "What the hell is she doing?" Archer whispered. "Trying to escape? Is she in her sleep?" Iris suggested. "You think she's sleepwalking?" "Honestly, I think that is the least horrifying scenario right now." Archer crept up behind her and Iris followed him. He was Olive's dad. He could get murdered first. "Hey, Olive," he said softly, "let's go back to bed." He put his hands on her shoulder and tried to steer her away from the door. "Be careful," Iris hissed. "Aren't you not supposed to wake a sleepwalker?" "I don't know," he hissed back. "What happens if I do?" "I don't know." Iris had goosebumps up and down her arms. Something about the dark house and Olive's unseeing eyes were really freaking her out. "It's fine," Archer whispered, his voice firm and steady. It was a comforting sound in the dark. "Come on, sweetie, back to bed," he coaxed, gently moving Olive back to her room, and thankfully, she let her sleepy shuffle take her back to her bedroom. Archer went with her, tucking her into bed while Iris waited in the hall, just in case. "Is she okay?" she asked when he emerged, closing the door softly behind him. "I think so. Scared the crap out of me, though." He slouched against the wall behind him. "Me too. That was creepy." He smirked. "Creepy?" She looked like a horror movie kid. "I'm really starting to question the media you're consuming. Murder podcasts and horror movies?" Was he teasing her? I was ready to call a young priest and an old priest. Archer laughed. The sound was low and rich in the silent house. Iris leaned against the wall behind her and slid down to the floor. Archer looked at her like he might return to the kitchen and leave her there alone. But instead, he slid down the wall as well, mirroring her position. "I don't know how I'm going to sleep now, wondering if she's going to get out of the house." The teasing smirk was gone, and now he just looked tired and worried. Again, it struck Iris how much he'd given up to be here, how much he'd sacrificed already for his daughter. "You put those locks on. I don't think she can get out." He nodded, but still looked doubtful, like he knew intellectually that she couldn't get hurt, but some part of him would always worry that she would. Parenthood, man. What a mindfuck. "I guess this is what it's going to be like," he said quietly, as though he wasn't talking to her anymore. His foot brushed against hers, seeking the comfort of contact. "One thing after another. We just figured out the eating thing, and now she tries to escape in her sleep." It was a serious moment. He was worried about his kid, but something about the insanity of the whole thing struck Iris as funny. Giggles escaped from her, and she clapped a hand over her mouth. Archer's head snapped up in surprise. "Are you laughing?" Her shoulders shook with the effort to hold it in. "Yes," she squeaked. "I'm sorry, but it's kind of funny. She had us both totally freaked out." Archer shook his head, but that smile was creeping back on his face. "I think this is an if you don't laugh you'll cry moment," she said between giggles. "We're both in way over our heads here." Probably not something she should admit to her boss, but it felt better this way, that they were in this together, that they were going to figure out how to deal with Olive together, for now. They would be in it together until Iris was sure Archer could handle things on his own, and then she would leave, because this level of worry and exhaustion and total helplessness was not something she planned to sign on for the long term. Parenthood was not for her. "So, you really don't know about her?" Iris asked the question she'd been dying to ask since she took the job. "I had no idea. You and her mom weren't..." "We worked at the same restaurant, slept together a few times, and then I left for Europe. I didn't hear from her after that." "Wow, yeah," he sighed. Iris couldn't imagine having news like that dropped in her lap. "Do you want kids?" he asked. "God knows," she blurted out, then immediately felt awful for her reaction. "Sorry," she winced. "I mean, kids are wonderful. I just never really pictured myself as a mom." What about you? She went on, feeling braver in the dark. Did you always want to be a dad? God, no, he echoed her with a wry smile, meeting Iris's eyes across the hall. But here I am. She smiled at him. I guess your old life wasn't very conducive to having a kid. Definitely not. A lot of late nights, long hours. I'm not sure how people fit kids into that lifestyle. But here you are, she whispered. She wasn't sure he'd admitted it to himself yet, but Iris knew he was all in now. Archer was Olive's dad, and he wasn't going anywhere. He was going to do what was best for Olive. Iris could see that, even in the dark, even with Archer looking like he needed about a week of solid sleep. Whether he knew it or not, Archer was a good dad. Archer's foot pushed against hers again. Thanks, he said. For what? Believing your child was possessed? His laughter washed over her like a caress in the dark. No, just for cheering me up, I guess. He was looking at her, his gaze tracing her face, slipping down to her bare shoulder and back again. Iris knew she'd been flirting with him since she moved in, and she also knew that she shouldn't be flirting with him at all. Nothing could happen between them, obviously. He was her boss and she needed this job, and she certainly didn't need to get caught up with this guy with a kid. And he couldn't be seen as the type of guy who has a fling with the nanny. That would definitely conflict with the whole doing what was right for Olive thing he was working on. Iris could leave at any time if she was just his nanny, but if she was anything else, she shook her head. Nothing else was on the table anyway. But what was the harm of a little flirtation? It was hard for Iris to resist. She'd always been a flirt. She liked the banter, the teasing, the small touches. Was that so wrong? It didn't always have to lead anywhere. It was harmless, really. Except when she met Archer's gaze again, even in this dark hallway, even though it was only their feet pressed together, Iris already knew nothing about this was going to be harmless. He looked dangerous in the dark. His hair was disheveled again because he'd been messing with it in the way that made Iris want to substitute her fingers for his. And a dark stubble covered his jaw. It would burn. If he kissed her, that stubble would burn her skin. A shiver ran down her at the thought. She thought about the dedication and sacrifices he'd made to achieve what he had, about how he was so damn good at what he did. Iris had never really dedicated herself to anything. She flitted from job to job, man to man. She was a flake. Archer clearly found her attractive, and she him, but they would never mesh well together. She would drive him crazy with her inattention, her inability to stick with anything. And she knew she was in trouble when even this imagined rejection hurt her feelings. I should get to bed, she said, for real this time. Right, of course. She got up, but Archer stayed where he was, like a sentry outside of Olive's door. You going to stay there all night? He shook his head. Nah, just for a bit longer. Iris stood looking down at him for another moment, at the worry still etched onto his face, at the exhaustion in his eyes, and she wanted to help, to do something to make that smile come back. But, like she told him, she was in way over her head, unqualified to be a nanny, unqualified to be anything other than an employee to this man. So she gave him a small nod and went to bed. It took a long time to fall asleep, wondering if he was still out there keeping watch. Chapter 14, page 103. Hey, Arch, how are things going? Hey, Dad. His father's face filled the screen, the big smile on his face almost able to cheer Archer up. He wasn't sure exactly when it happened, but at some point his dad had become his best friend. That fact alone said a lot about what Archer had been focused on for the last decade. His dad was the last man standing in the friend department, and that was probably only because he was legally obligated to care about Archer's problems. And today felt like a day he needed his dad's no-nonsense approach to life, to put those problems into perspective. Archer was sitting out behind the diner on an ancient bench he imagined had been used for smoke breaks throughout the last century. The sun was shining and the air was still chilly, but Archer had needed a break and a cigarette. Unfortunately, he wasn't allowed one of those anymore, so he had to settle for the fresh air. He'd given up on the classic pancake recipe for the moment. Instead, he put a lemon poppy seed pancake topped with creme fraiche on the menu today, and he nearly had an early morning riot on his hands. Eventually, he'd managed to convince a few patrons to try them, and Tim and Tammy had even cleared their plates. He was trying to take this as a win, but after his long night of sleeping propped up in the hallway, he had a headache and desperately needed a nap. You look like hell. Thanks, Dad. That's nice of you to say. His father chuckled. How are things going with Olive? They hadn't wanted to overwhelm Olive all at once with a bunch of new family members, so his father hadn't met her yet, even over the phone, but Archer had been updating him nearly every day. She was sleepwalking last night. Sleepwalking? Wow, that's a new one. Archer ran a hand down his face. His stubble was nearly a beard now, and he really needed to shave, and probably get a haircut. But grooming himself really hadn't seemed important today when he'd been terrified all night that his daughter was going to sleepwalk into the street. Yeah, I put child-proof locks on the door already, but it still freaked me out. I slept in the hallway, he admitted with a wince. The hallway? You sound like me when you were a baby. His dad had that fond smile on his face that people always got when they reminisced about their children, even as they told the most heinous stories of sleepless nights and diaper blowouts, like it had all been as magical as it was horrendous. The smile had never made sense to Archer before, but now he could almost imagine telling this sleepwalking story someday with that smile. But not today. Today he just felt miserable and exhausted about it. Really? Oh yes, I was so worried about you when we brought you home. You were so small, and I was responsible for you. It felt very heavy. Heavy, exactly. Everything had felt heavy since he found out about Olive. Suddenly his life had this weight when before he'd moved through the world unencumbered. He wasn't sure he could carry it all. A flash of Iris, her smile in the dark, her foot resting against his, appeared in his mind. She'd made everything feel lighter just for a moment. But helping to carry his burdens was way above Iris's pay grade. So how did you manage it? He asked. His father's smile grew. I'm not sure I did. He chuckled. I still worry about you all the time. You don't have to worry about me, Dad. He scuffed. Oh, okay, I'll just stop now after all this time. So I'm just doomed then to worry all the time? Pretty much. Thanks. This has been a wonderful pep talk. His dad laughed again. It'll get better, Arch. You won't sleep every night in the hallway. I can promise you that much. Well, that's comforting, he said, the sarcasm intensified by how tired he was. His father ignored it. How's the nanny working out? What's her name? Lily? Rose? Iris? Right. I knew it was a flower name. How are things working out with Iris? Archer had never been particularly good at lying to his father, which had made for an interesting relationship when he was a teenager, and very often ended up confessing to whatever he and his friends had gotten up to on Friday nights. But he'd somehow managed to omit the fact that Iris wasn't actually a sweet old lady, but a gorgeous yoga instructor with a wardrobe of too tiny clothing, and how he'd found himself sniffing her shampoo in the shower this morning, like some kind of lovesick teenager. Fine, he choked out. Things are going fine. Fine? His father's eyes narrowed behind his glasses like he wasn't buying it. Yep, fine. Olive likes her, so that's really all that matters. How's the living arrangement working out? The living arrangement in which Iris wanders the house at all hours of the night in the t-shirt that slips off her shoulder and smiles at him in the dark and makes him laugh even when he doesn't want to? That living arrangement? Archer swallowed. Fine. His dad was studying him, but luckily Archer was saved by his stepmom, Kathy. Is that Archer? She cooed, her face eclipsing his father's on the screen. Hi, Arch. How's Olive? When do we get to meet her? Archer's parents had split when he was in high school, and when his father remarried, he picked a wife who was opposite from Archer's mother in nearly every way. Where Archer had never seen his mother wear more makeup than an occasional swipe of chapstick, Kathy was never without a full face. Her bleached blonde hair done up like she was heading somewhere much fancier than golf with his dad. Archer's mother was a scientist, always traveling somewhere in the world to study the effects of climate change on bird migration. While Kathy did nails at the local spa and was always home to spend time with his dad, the two nearly inseparable since the day they got married at the courthouse with Archer as their witness. Archer loved his mother, but he understood why his dad loved Kathy. And she'd always been kind to Archer, never trying to become his new mom, but there for him when his mom couldn't be. Hi, Kathy. Soon, I just want her to get a bit more settled. Of course, that makes perfect sense. You're such a good dad already, Arch. We're so proud of you. She beamed at him through the phone, and maybe it was the sleep deprivation, but he almost wished he was there with them, even though he hated golf and his stepmother's too tight hugs. Thanks. He wasn't sure Kathy knew what the hell she was talking about on that front, but it was nice to hear anyway. All right, Arch, we gotta go. His father's voice came from somewhere behind Kathy's hair. Oh, that's right. We got a 1 o'clock tea time today, Kathy said, blowing Archer a kiss before disappearing from the screen. Bye, honey, she called. Bye. Hang in there, kid. Thanks, Dad. And next time I want to hear about that nanny. His dad's face was the same stern, no-nonsense face that had given Archer to spill his guts about the time he and his friends skipped class to go smoke in the woods behind the school. Archer swallowed his guilt. Yeah, sure. Not much to tell. His father frowned. Archer frowned back. I'll talk to you tomorrow, his dad said. Love you, Arch. Archer sighed. Love you too. He ended the call and sat staring at the phone. He just couldn't imagine how he would ever live up to his father's example. It was like the guy had been born knowing what to do. Although Archer was too young to remember if or when his father had ever been uncertain or screwed up stuff. Was 5 still too young, or would Olive remember every single one of his fuck-ups to relay to her future therapist? Oh God, he could only imagine what she was telling her current therapist. He groaned, cradling his head in his hands. Chef? Maribel was leaning out the back door with a concerned look on her face. Yes? He straightened against the brick wall behind him, attempting to look at least somewhat competent. Cyrus says we're out of zucchini for the sandwiches. How can that be? Maribel gave him a small smile. A lot of lunch orders for that veggie sandwich. Oh, something like pride filled his chest. He remembered what that felt like. Tell him to sub in summer squash for today. Got it. She was about to turn to go back in, but gave him another once-over. Something wrong? He almost shook his head and denied anything being wrong. But Maribel had kids, and it took a village, right? Olive was sleepwalking last night. I'm worried she'll get out in the middle of the night. Oh, I had a sleepwalker. You did? Please tell me you didn't have to sleep outside their door until they turned 13. She laughed. No, just put bells on the door. Bells? Yeah, we pulled out of the Christmas decorations and tied them around the doorknob. That way, if he tried to open the door, we heard him. That's brilliant. Parenthood makes you resourceful. Something to look forward to, I guess. She gave him another sympathetic smile, but not like she felt bad for him, just that she understood what he was going through. If it makes you feel any better, she said, my kid never tried to go anywhere. We just find him on the couch or sometimes in his sister's room. Once he curled up in the dog's bed and went back to sleep. He chuckled. That does make me feel better, actually. Thanks. Of course, Chef. I'm here if you need anything. She ducked her head with another small smile and went back into the diner. And just like last night with Iris, things felt a little lighter. Okay. Well, we left off on chapter 15, page 111. Wow. I really like this book. There's a lot to say, and I know it's going to have a good ending, but so let me know below, guys, what you're thinking of it so far, and if it's what you thought it would be. Sometimes books are not what you think they would be, but they turn out being better, you know? And this is not at all what I thought the book would be about, but I'm really into it. I like it a lot. So I will catch you guys up tomorrow on chapter 15, page 111, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.